And so, what we are going to be speaking about, I really do believe it's foundational and fundamental to improving our lives and elevating our lives in any and every area. And we'll get to see that. So, we're going to be presenting a pathway, a framework, a formula of how we can engage life in such a way that we can improve whatever area of our lives that may be a priority to us. So without further ado, let me just share my screen so we can get started. Okay, so for those of you who are here for the first time, my name is David Homer. I have been in the healthcare arena for the last 30 years or so. I spent 25 years in clinical practice in naturopathic medicine, and I'm also very much a spiritual minded individual, and I incorporate that with everything that I do, including the way how I live my life day to day. And I teach and promote a concept called whole living, and it is navigating life with spiritual awareness. It is not a religious or doctrinal type of rule-based system or belief system of any type. It is just an of how um, understanding how science just reveals divine law and divine order in how we live our lives. And whole living is really about living our very best life. And if we really want to live our best life, we have to become our best self. And our highest state of being is really wholeness. So for us to be whole and complete, if we could achieve this, which we all can because it's our inherent and natural design, it's our most authentic state of being is to be whole. And if we can return to being and living from that posture, life could be actually quite extraordinary. And so I'm going to talk about um, an understanding of that and how that, the pathway of how that can present solutions for how we can improve our lives in any and every area. You may be on the call. I don't know what may be your concerns, your interests in terms of improving our lives, but we all want to improve our lives. We all are looking for a better quality of life. Perhaps you are here because of some physical ailment, some physical condition, maybe a recent diagnosis. You have some concerns about your physical well being. Perhaps it's about overcoming some of our mindset challenges. Perhaps you're in a place where you want to improve yourself. You're struggling with self-worth. You're struggling with procrastination. You're struggling with being committed. You're struggling with maybe you have a business and you're trying to maneuver how to work with your staff, or your personnel, your customers to up level things in your business. Maybe you're trying to improve your financial position, trying to improve the relationships in your home, on the job generally. Whatever area of your life that you're looking is a priority for you at this point in your journey, you're going to find a solution for that within what we're going to be talking about. I'm also going to be sharing with you an extraordinary technology that empowers better well-being. And it's a very simple and elegant pattern that redefines mind-body synergy, and it unlocks the helping to unlock human potential. Why I'm also going to be sharing that with you is because it's a perfect marriage with what I do, what I teach, what I integrate into my own life, and it's there's nothing in the world that's like it. It's quite profound, it's quite impactful, and I believe it's something that we all need to look at and consider. And so I'll also talk about how that integrates with the whole pathway to wholeness and how it can help to improve our well-being in every area and on every level. And so to begin our journey this evening, I want us to consider where we are now in our lives, and as we look forward in these challenging times that we live in, as to where we're heading. And I want you to think about it as we go through this evening. Think about all that we're going to be talking about introspectively, putting yourself in the midst of it. And wherever we are today is the sum of all the choices that we've made, and where life is going to take us, how it's going to unfold, is going to be dependent on the choices that we're going to be making henceforth. And our choice is always going to be between one way or another, one thing or another. And in life, we essentially have only two pathways that we can choose from. And that because of the duality of creation or the duality of reality, there's only going to be one or two ways that we can go, that we can choose in life. And it's relative to the dual natures that we have. Being we have a physical and a spiritual nature, and we're either going to live by one or the other. And so one pathway is going to lead to satisfaction, and that's a life of empowerment, growth, abundance, and fulfillment. This is a life where we live with energy, vibrancy, enthusiasm. This is where we live with vision, purpose. This is where life has meaning and value. And when we get to the end of the line, and one thing with whichever path we choose, it has a finish line. It comes to a point where it comes to an end for each one of us. And when we go the way of love, when we get to that, when the end comes, we find that it has been a life that was worth living and a life of satisfaction. The left side, the side of fear, and again, these are relative to whichever nature we choose to live by, and hopefully you'll get to capture that as we go through. This way is a way that leads to a life that's of instability and struggle and limitations, a life that where we struggle to identify and recognize what our purpose is, and we struggle to be able to exercise our true potential in life. This is a life where um, all the uncertainties, and it's a life of striving and surviving. And it's when we get to the finish line on this side, it's usually one with regret. And there's a book that I read many years ago, and it's a book that's probably worth reading. It's called The Five Regrets of the Dying. And it was written by a nurse who spent years working in palliative care, people who were at the end of life. And when working with many people over the years, she discovered that there were five common things among those who were at that approaching that finish line. And one of them, what came out of that study, and she wrote about it. Her book became a best-selling book. She found that 95% of people get to that end and they have regrets for the way that they did not live. Not for the way that they lived, but they have regrets for the way that they did not live. Only 5% of people got to the end of that journey and were satisfied with the way they lived their life. Now, when I read that, that really struck me. And it's part of what drives me today in my own personal life, because there was a time when, for a couple of years, I was in the hospital every week, working with people in various ways. And while I was in the hospitals, I tested that what I read in that book, and I asked many of the people that were these were not dying people; these were just very sick people with various conditions. And I would ask them if there were a way that you can go back and live life over, would you live it the same way? And everyone said yes. If I could, if it really were possible, I would take the chance. And no, I would not live the way that I lived. And when I asked, I must have asked, I don't know, maybe, I mean, couple of hundred people over time that question, and I never got anyone that said, if I could live life over, I would live it differently. Everyone said the same thing. And after a while, it hits you and it strikes you that most of us live our lives in such a way that we get to the end and we wish that we had done it differently. Well, I want to really propose to us that moving forward from here, our lives can be whatever we want it to be, and it's just going to be choice. On the left side of fear, this is a life of struggle and striving, and the majority of humanity goes this way. Inadvertently, we don't consciously choose it, but most of us go this way. And it's because of the state of being that we find ourselves in, which is largely conditioned, that takes us this way. It's really an unstable way of state of being. It's a sense of self that is rooted in lack of self-worth and self-acceptance. And we're conditioned from very early to have some of these deficiencies. And it is where we go through life living it based on the expectations of others and conforming to societal standards, where we become inauthentic in the way we express ourselves. And it's the way where we take life for granted. And we live as though there's no end in sight, or there's never going to come to an end. And whatever we take for granted is because we don't see the full value of it. Anything that we don't see the full value of is always going to be taken for granted and often misused. And so many of us go this way. I want to propose to us that we all can go the other way. We can go the way of love. But it's all about maintaining a state of being, a sense of self, a regard for oneself, an acceptance of oneself, a love for oneself, an appreciation for oneself, a compassion and kindness to oneself. It's a different mindset, but most of us don't go this way because it is not how the world around us conditions us to see ourselves and to think about life. But if we're going to live a life that is fulfilling, a life where we accomplish our dreams and our goals, a life where there's no limitations to what we could achieve, where we can maximize our potential and our achievements. This is this way. And it's possible for each one of us, and it's just a state of being that we have to embrace. And the good thing about it is that it is inherently and naturally who we are. We just are not aware of it because we have not been so conditioned. And so I want us to consider, as we go through this evening, looking at this and making choices and decisions henceforth from the very root and the very foundation of it all, so that we can live and appreciate the lives that we really all have. And so there is this scripture that is very appropriate for us to consider. It says, "Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom." This has been very helpful to me, and it's not talking about the number of days that you have left on this earth, although that may be useful to consider. When I consider, if I look at the number of days I have left at 65, if I'm going to make it until 90, it's probably like 9,000 and something days I have still to go. But this scripture is not about counting the days. It's about recognizing that there is a impermanence to life, that we all will come to an end one day. And the wisdom of it is to be able to live intentionally, to live with awareness, to live consciously aware, and not just be sleepwalking through life, as many do, and not just going through life drifting as the wind blows, but taking charge, being sovereign about our lives, and being intentional about the way we live. This is what it is because why? Because we don't, life, it comes to an end one day. Earthly living comes to an end one day. And this journey that we have ahead of us, It can be extraordinary. It can be wonderful. It can be stress free. It could be beautiful. It could be prosperous. It could be whatever we want it to be. Why? Because we all have the capacity to do it. And it's going to be just a choice how we are going to choose. But we're going to see now why and how we make the choices we make that take us to the way life is going to go. But that's one of our first powers is that we have the power to choose. And where we are today and where we're going to be ahead is all going to be about choice. And so the topic is always going to be restoring your health and awakening your life. Our life becomes awakened to who we truly are and what we are capable of when we restore our health. And restore our health meaning understanding health in the true essence of what health is and restoring that, which would suggest it is not restored and it is fractured in some way or it's broken in some way and it needs to be restored. And that is the case, which is why most people we go down the road of life and get to the end, and in hindsight, we look back and we wish that we had done things differently. So, if you look at the definition of health, health is a state of complete physical, mental, spiritual, and social well being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And so, we have to first recognize that it is not about the absence of disease or infirmity, which is how we are conditioned to think about health. When we think health, we think about our body, about our diet, our nutrition, these things that how our body feels and how our body functions. While it includes that, that's a very small segment of what health is. Health is not about how the body feels and functions alone. It is a complete state of being that encompasses our physical well being, our mental, spiritual well being, our social well being, and it's how those dimensions of our life align in harmony and in unity. What's broken and needs to be restored is that alignment, the unified alignment of our physical, mental, and spiritual well being and how that relates to the social framework of life and how it works in harmony and unison. That's a truly healthy life, but it takes intentional and a conscious awareness in how we engage our day-to-day living in order to accomplish this alignment. But once we work towards restoring our health, we awaken to a way of thinking, living, and being that causes us to engage life in such a way that whatsoever we desire and can dream and can look towards, we can achieve. Because the truth is, nothing is impossible for us to achieve. And it's all about and entirely about our state of being. So, health is a state of being that is complete. And that is what we're going to be working towards. When we lose health, we enter human struggle. A loss of health equals the struggles that we're finding. So if we take the definition of health and we unpack it, physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, our social well-being, and I've added the economics in there because it's inseparable. You can't separate it out. Our own personal well-being, which is in the first block, we look across the world and we see that in these areas, there is struggle across the globe. It really is a global pandemic in every area that we're dealing with, which is why it needs to, hence the restoration. Life was never meant and never designed to be an uphill struggle, but many of us go through life today feeling that life is an uphill climb. We're seeing chronic lifestyle disease escalating at a rate that continually increasing despite our advancements in technology and know-how and understanding of human physiology. Sickness and disease is getting worse. They call it lifestyle diseases diseases that come about from the way we choose and the style of how we live our lives. 74% of global death is because of the way we choose to live that causes our bodies to develop all kind of illnesses. There are what about 20,000 diseases on the planet, and medicine can only deal with less than a third of them. And it's happening at younger ages. We are seeing mental decline. In fact, the World Health Organization says that cognitive decline is now the leading cause of disability worldwide. The mental issues that are showing up now wasn't happening 20 years ago. What's going on? The and it's becoming harder and harder to deal with the healthcare cost. I'm just bringing this out that when it comes to that first block of our personal well-being, there's lots of struggle. When it comes to our spiritual well-being, lacking value, purpose, and meaning in life, people are disillusioned about even their identity. And there's a divergent understanding of God and spirituality. And so, in that first block, this is where it begins that we are fractured in our own selves. Our very own selves, we are broken, which is why these statistics are the way it is. This physically, mentally, and spiritually, which is our own personal well being, that needs to be in harmony. And there's a reason why we struggle with that. And it's all part of the social conditioning, and there's reasons of which we can't get into all of it, but I want to give you the framework of the understanding. But because of our brokenness here, the social framework of life is also unraveling across the globe, increasing family conflicts, social polarizations, cultural fragmentation, a loss of authentic expression among people. Um, you're finding that there's unhealthier marriages. There people are refraining from getting married, and when they get married, they don't want to have children. The whole social structure is shaking. Suicide rates are increasing here in the United States. One person every 11 minutes commits suicide. People are losing their way. Increasing geopolitical tensions and conflicts in the social framework in which we live, that is shaking. But it's shaking because the first block is broken. You see, the principle is that you love your neighbors, you love yourself. And we cannot have harmonious relationships within the social framework when we ourselves are lacking it. And the reason why we are fragmented, why we are broken in ourselves, is because our greatest deficiency is love for self. Now, as far as the psychology and philosophy and counseling and other mental health authorities, that's the one thing that stands out, is that one of humanity's greatest deficiency is a love for themselves. And so we look for our sense of worth and value and acceptance externally. We need to be affirmed, we need to be validated, we need to be appreciated. And when we're not, we're bent out of shape. We seek value by attaining accolades and the external realities of where we live and the job we have, the status we hold, and these are the things that we hold on to give us that sense of meaning and value, because it's lacking within our own self, and that has to be where the fundamental fix has to come, because to reach out into the social framework and to be able to be our best and experience our best life there, we have to have that love for self before it could even be expressed externally. Because of that fragmentation in the social framework is what creates the economic culture that we have today, where just like sickness and disease, we're finding ourselves in the same place. There's growing economic insecurities and inequality. Most people are struggling financially. Why is this important? Because the economic framework of life is the scaffolding that holds the social framework together. So you cannot separate the socio-economic framework in which we live. It's all connected together. And most people, we spend our time, our energy, and our effort more than anything else trying to have more money, trying to increase our financial position, to gain wealth, etc. Because our whole choices in life is going to be is pinned on this. However much we have, it changes the choices that we can make in life. However little bit we have, it limits the choices that we can make in life, whether it be what we eat, what we wear, the education we have, how we provide for our children, where we live. Everything is determined by this economic block. And the most of the world is struggling with this, where most of us are living in debt. Most of us leave this planet in debt and pass it on to our children. The entire world, the global debt is an unpayable amount. So globally, the entire world is in debt. Most people live in debt and struggle financially. The whole world is struggling socially. And the root of it is, it starts with you and it starts with me. Because we in ourselves, we are broken. And this creates a cycle where when it comes right down to the economic model and to the money, it, it's going to affect how our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, our own personal well-being, how we're able to look after ourselves, how we're able to look, and it goes to how we're able to look after our families. And it's one cycle, I call it the cycle of fractured living. And it's a perpetual cycle. And it creates this struggle in life and this ongoing cycle. It is defined today in what we call stressful living. Life is stressful. And stress now has become a pandemic in itself. And so that asks to answer the question, why does human struggles persist even though knowledge and technology and we're advancing and we're becoming better in terms of advancing as a species, but yet our struggles don't seem to be getting better. And it brings to mind what Mahatma Gandhi said. He has a quote where he says, "Be the change that you want to see in the world." It starts with you and it starts with me. If I am going to have a better life, I need to become a better me. And becoming a better me, at the very root of it all, I must have love for myself. And this is the formula that we have to work with. And so, looking at our physical, mental, and spiritual well being, we have to understand the framework of how to put that together. Many of us understand and we believe that we are three-dimensional beings: body, mind, spirit. Or you can say body, soul, spirit. But we don't fully understand how they incorporate and how they function as a singular whole. So while we're thinking three dimension, it's really just one whole that has three areas of functionality that is so unified and interconnected that you cannot affect one without affecting the other. Each dimension exists to serve the existence of the other, so it's completely inseparable. And when we learn how we can deal with that and master that, then we will find how life is going to unfold for us so wonderfully. And it's a journey we're all capable of. Why? Because it's inherently and naturally how we're created to live and how our very divine design is. And so I want to give you a framework of understanding, and I want you to follow with me because it will help us to be able to bring it into a practical way of understanding and applying. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a different way to think of it so that it could be more applicable. So think of it as it is you, your mind, and your body. One being. You, me, we are, our true essence of being is spiritual. It's eternal. It's the one thing that when life expires on this side, we will still have an existence somewhere else and we're going to be fully aware of it. But this is the existence of us, we as a spiritual being, and this is our authentic state. This is at the core who we really are. And when I say spiritual, Take away any type of religious or doctrinal type of uh, things out of your mind. I'm just talking about accepting that there's a part of us that is intangible. It's a part of us where the very essence of life, what gives life to our body, it is what where the intangible nature of who we are allows us to experience life in the intangibles, meaning love, peace, joy, compassion, gratitude, the things that are non physical, the things that cannot be touched by physical senses. It is that part of us that allows us to be able to tap into capacities and potentials that shape our reality. It is the part of us from which our true power and potential comes from. It is who we are, but it flows from us through a dimension of our being we call our mind. And our potential flows from us through our mind, and it happens through consciousness. This is another conversation by just giving us the framework. Our mind is the bridge between us and the world. Understanding when we say us, and I say you, our mind by default, because of conditioning, goes to our physicality. Because we naturally identify with our physical body as us because of conditioning. Most people unconsciously perceive themselves as their body. But your body is not you, it is your body, just like it's your car or your house. It's not you, it's your body, your mind, and you are the very essence of the life inside that's emanating through it all. Now, and the mind is the bridge between you and the world outside, which our body connects us to the physical reality. Our body is the instrument that takes us through this life and how living is expressed, our experience of life, and whatever that will be, it happens through this vehicle, through this instrument we call our body. And the stream goes from mind to body through the central nervous system. The central nervous system is what dictates how we experience what the mind transacts. And so true health is the unified alignment of spirit, mind, and body when it's in one stream and if life flows from the inside out. The entire model of creation is from invisible into visible, from inner to outer. This is the natural creative order. And true health is when it's aligned in harmony, and is only aligned in harmony when it flows in its natural creative order from you, your mind, and your body. Now, spiritual life, which is imbued with love and truth, that's the essential nature of our life, just like the nature of fire is heat. The nature of you and I, the nature of our spiritual life is love and truth. And that aligns the creative order through consciousness. Mind processes what consciousness transmits as awareness. I'm not going to get too technical, but I want us to understand how this works and we're going to appreciate it. Mind processes consciousness as awareness and interprets our thoughts and beliefs into experience through the central nervous system, which we feel in our bodies. This is how life is experienced. The body reflects that inner state according to how the mind is oriented, meaning the mind, which is the bridge between you and the outside world, it can be oriented either by our true essence of being, love and truth, or it could be oriented by our physicality, which is how we are naturally conditioned. And so when it's oriented by our true essence, we perceive life through a lens of inner reality where everything is defined by love and wholeness, unity. The lens of how we interpret life when it flows from our true essence of being, is seen only one way. All that I'm telling you is philosophically, scripturally, spiritually, metaphysically, all validated. When life flows from the inside out, it is perceived through a lens of reality that everything is unified. That's when the mind is oriented internally. If the mind is now oriented from physicality, we perceive everything from an outer reality. And outer is based on fear and separation. And so when our mind becomes oriented or conditioned by physical senses, which is how we are taught and conditioned from birth, our reality is based on comparison and me or you, us and them, win and lose. There's always going to be a separation of things. We will always engage life in such a way that it's always going to be a struggle, and the struggle is our sense of self and worth is always going to be obscured. You see, the bridge here, our living, is between our mind and our body. And how we perceive reality is caught up in this. In our workshops, we help to understand and break it down how this is so. But once this becomes our reality, the bridge between mind and our true essence of being as spirit, this becomes obscured. We only can intellectually acknowledge it as a reality, but existentially, we have no awareness. We don't experience it as an awareness. We just intellectually acknowledge it as so. There are times when it will speak through because consciousness never stops flowing. Consciousness is the life. If consciousness stops, this body is dead. Consciousness is the very force, the force of the end, the source of life that comes from within that keeps our physicality alive. It is the Wi-Fi signal that governs how every cell in this body is reading life. That's another story, but this is how it flows. And so we need to be able to fix the bridge between which exists. Life flows from the inside out, but it flows from mind to body based on how the mind has been conditioned by physicality. And we lose sense of our sense of self, which is why the greatest deficiency validated by the authorities that humanity has is a lack of love for self. That's why guilt and shame and issues with self-esteem and self-acceptance and not being able to forgive yourself and having self, why we struggle with these things that prevent us from being able to have the attitudes, mindsets to discover purpose and potential, why these things elude us is because the bridge between here has become obscured between you and your mind. We live between mind and body. And so if we are going to repair this, the repairing is that the alignment, the restoring the alignment means that the mind has to be reoriented to our true essence of being. And it all begins with how we think. See, as the man thinks in his heart, as he thinks and feels, it determines his reality. So thoughts are the seeds from where it will all spring. And thoughts emerge from one or two sources. Is either going to come from consciousness or sensory stimuli from subconscious. In other words, our thoughts are going to arise either coming from the inside out or the outside in. But thoughts, we don't think thoughts just arise. We have about 70,000 thoughts a day, according to the experts. And according to the experts, 75% of them are repetitive thoughts. Most of them are not new. We only use about 5% of our cognitive abilities. About 95% is automatic, it's subconscious, and we're not involved. So when it comes to rationalizing and thinking and making decisions, that's 5%. 95% is programs running automatically in the background. But so here it is, a thought arises. And this is how it works with how we are engaging, making our choices and decisions and navigating life. And all of it is being transacted right here in the middle based on how the mind is oriented, inner or outer. So follow with me, thoughts arise, but the thoughts are filtered through perception, and our perception is just the lens in how we interpret life, how we see life, and how we interpret it, and how we respond to it, and how we react to it. However, whatever that is, the lens that we are seeing, that's perception. And perception is formed by societal conditioning, beliefs and values, and it shapes what we call mindsets. So, in other words, our thoughts are filtered through our mindsets. And so, when we have a thought, perception interprets those thoughts into experience as emotions. So, I want us to understand how this works. If we don't have emotions, we do not experience life. Turn off emotions, shut down our endocrine system, so where there's no emotional feelings, shut down our nervous system, and we will walk through life alive, but like zombies. We would have no experience. Emotions are the signature or the end result of an experience. But those emotions emerge based on how we interpret thoughts. So it's not just a circumstance has happened, somebody says something, somebody does something. What we think about what was said or done, how that's interpreted based on how our mind has been set by culture, determines how we feel about it. That's how so emotions are the extensions of how our thoughts are interpreted through our mindsets. Why is this important? Because this is our state of being. Emotions are the language of the body that reveal alignment or misalignment. So I want us to not think of emotions as being good or bad. Think of the emotions we have, whether it's negative. If it's negative, and it's frustration, and it's anxiety, and it's anger, and it is hate, and it's whatever it is, don't think of it as negative. Think of it as just as a signal as to being aligned or misaligned. Because emotions, they're the language of the body. Thoughts are the language of the mind. Emotions are the language of the body. And how we feel determines our state of being. Emotions are vibrational frequencies that define our state of being. I have to say, I feel angry. That's your state of being. But what we need to know deeper than that, that emotions are vibrational frequencies that are read by every cell in our body. So emotions also have a big impact on our physical and mental wellness. They are the energies of thoughts that drive our choices. When we get to the point of emotions, we have now reached that juncture or that bridge or that point where we now will make a choice. So it's not enough to say to somebody, you need to make better choices. You can't make better choices unless you have a state of being consistent with better choices, which means you must have emotions consistent with better choices, which means you need to be interpreting reality with a mindset that helps you to make better choices, which means if your mind is not renewed or changed from how it has been, you can't change. You can try, it could last, and that's what we do. We cycle around. We read a good book, we go to a seminar, we go to a workshop, and we come away motivated, and we start to engage a process, and we get better for a little while, and then we cycle back around, and that cycle of fractured living starts again. And so whether it is a New Year's resolution, whether it is I vow to change my diet, whether it is I am not going to let that person make me angry, we can make We want to do better, we want to be better, we want to experience life better, but we keep cycling around. But the truth is that the mind, the bridge, has to be renewed. And the renewal means that it has to be reoriented towards the very essence of being, which is love for self. Our true essence is love, and love for self will always elude us if our mind is conditioned by and oriented entirely in our physical well-being. If we don't gain the sight and start the practices and engage the process of reorienting our minds towards what is true about ourselves, this becomes a lifetime struggle for us. And it's not that we cannot be successful in some regards in life, it just means that we have to fight really hard to get it. And if you're talking about financial success, we could be like the many who have gained financial success but are not really happy or fulfilled, or they did it at the expense of the relationships in their family, etc. We're talking about from a place where not only are we going to have an extraordinary life in every dimension, but we are going to feel fulfilled. So understand, this is the framework that we're dealing with. The choices that we're going to make have to be based on a mindset that is based on values and beliefs and a sense of self that shapes a perception that whatever life will bring to us, that we will look through that lens and interpret it. This happens automatically. We don't consciously interpret it. You don't consciously, somebody says something and it gets you upset. You don't consciously decide, you know what, I think I'm going to get upset at what they said. It's reflexive. It's wired in to our brains, which is the mind's operating system. It's wired in. And so renewing the mind, our thought patterns, and how we respond to life also means rewiring the brain and how the brain works. And that's a process of how and this process is what we teach, and what we will be teaching in our workshops of how we can come to a place where when we work with people who are building their businesses, who are trying to get ahead in life, and they're saying, you know, I'm fighting against discipline. I need to be more disciplined. Um, you know, I struggle with consistency and being committed and whatnot. All of it comes down to right here. You don't need to understand how to be more disciplined and fight to be disciplined, and discipline becomes burdensome. Whereas discipline can flow so freely when this alignment, nobody has to push you to do something. You just want to do it because you're interpreting life from a completely different reality. And so a tree is known by its fruit. And if we want to have a fruitful life in every area, this is the model of how it works. And so think of the tree, think of your life as a tree, the tree of your life, and you want it to be fruitful. That tree is planted in a soil, and that soil is either going to be one of the two of our natures. Our ego, either our physical nature, which our sense of identity, which would be an ego identity, and that's defined by our five senses, which has conditioned our thinking, all the data that we took in, or our spiritual nature, which is our divine identity, and that also has senses, but we hardly take in data from that. And if we do, it doesn't stay in because it gets overridden by what is already conditioned. But whatever soil we are rooted in will determine the state of being that we are grounded in. And you see, the trunk of the tree extends from the roots. That is the mind that filters everything else that comes up from the roots. The branches are the different aspects of our lives, everything that we're involved in, our businesses, our families, our growth, our development, our health. All that we are doing are all the different branches, and we want to be fruitful in all the branches. The fruit are the emotions that ripen into the behaviors that determine the quality of our life. The emotions, the point that we make choices, that we make decisions, what's driving that springs from our emotions, and that's what ripens into behavior. attitudes, and how we engage life. And so it determines the quality of life. So I hope you understand the model. So how we perceive ourselves defines the boundaries of our potential. No one can live beyond their sense of self. If our sense of self is inadequate, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. If we are deficient in that, that is the limit of what we are capable of achieving. And what we have to do is we try to adopt a sense of self out externally from others. And while that could be helpful at times, our true essence of being is limitless. Our potential is limitless, where we can do the impossible if we just have to understand who we really are. And so naturally, we are made to live, we are whole and complete. That's our natural state. And to experience a truly healthy life means that we have to have sovereignty, which means personal authority over every dimension of our lives. Each area, and why is that important? Because that's what wholeness is. No area is separate. We cannot say, I am excellent in one area and not in another, because that's an impossibility, because it's one whole. If we think that way, then we are misguided in our thinking. When one dimension of our life is out of order, it creates ripples of imbalance across every aspect of our lives. And the good thing about that is that when we start to bring it back together, when we start working on realigning, it starts to fix everything else back in alignment. It's not like all 6 areas need to be independently fixed. They all begin to align when we start from the beginning. And the beginning really is taking governance over our physical well being, because that is what rules, that is what has conditioned our mindsets. Our physical well being is what conditions our reality and our sense of self. And that is where we must take governance over. Once we start doing that, and it starts as simple as saying, like, you need to honor yourself, you need to honor your body, you need to treat it in a way that is worthy of living healthy, vibrant, and so you can be free of disease and function at an optimal level. And that and we would all agree to that, but we struggle with how we feed our bodies and how we treat our bodies and what we do or shouldn't do. We all struggle with that. So we're not honoring ourselves as we should, but that's where it begins. It begins by, and while we're doing that, we have to now start reorienting the mind inwardly. So sovereignty is rooted in that awakened identity, understanding who we are, because identity is what unlocks potential. Our potential is always connected to who we are. And who we are and what we are capable of is what reveals our purpose. Our purpose is always connected to what we are capable of doing. And what we're capable of doing is connected to how we see ourselves. So, how we see ourselves really determines how we will value our lives. And that's why we must reorient the mind inwardly, because how we see ourselves is going to determine how we're going to perceive, interpret, and engage with life. And if we want to reign in life, we need a perspective that is shaped by a mindset that's rooted in self love, truth, and divine order. And that has to be the framework for cultivating the wholeness of health. This is the pathway back to how we can have governance over our lives in every dimension. So, that loss of health is losing the flow of that inner power between mind and body. And that's what we want to bring back. And so we understand that mind is the central axis of how living is expressed and how life is experienced. It is the gateway for creating our reality. Our minds are the most powerful thing we have in navigating our living experience on this earth. It is what transacts the whole process. It's what navigates our life, how we navigate this earthly experience is this thing called the mind. It is so powerful that if we can believe a mental capacity, nothing is impossible. But yet, how many of us really spend time engaging, cultivating and nurturing our minds, our mindsets, and what we feed our minds. It's not something that a lot of people generally do. Why? Because we don't understand how powerful this thing really is. We don't understand it. Before we can even consider what we feed into our bodies, we should consider what we feed into our minds. This is very, very important. But when our mental state is peaceful, which is the natural state of a mind that's oriented in our true essence of being, when our mind is in a peaceful state, we are aligned in wholeness. That's when life flows in this creative order. Mind and body retain their natural synergy, and it releases the creative potential to live optimally in every area of our lives. But when thought patterns and emotional responses are out of sync with peace, an inner tension emerges and it creates a conflict between who we really are and who we think we are or how we've conditioned to be. So there's a conflict between our divine nature and our egocentric state of how we've been conditioned. And the conflict between the two creates an inner tension. That inner tension or that dissonance or that inner disharmony, it's because there's a loss of spiritual awareness. There's a spiritual acknowledgement, but what we're not aware of does not exist. And when we're engaged in life day to day and we're going through our daily life without life being calibrated by conscious awareness of our spirituality, we're not going to experience or interpret life in that reality. So this inner disharmony that we experience because of a loss of spiritual awareness, it divides our perception between life's outer pressures and the inner presence of being, which is always peace and stillness. And it causes physical, mental, and emotional misalignment, manifesting as what we call stress. Stress is a symptom of misalignment. Stress is a symptom of misalignment. I wanted to bring us to this point because everyone that I deal with, somewhere in the conversation, that comes up, the stresses of life, in one way or the other. And life is being seen as stressful, and we don't understand. And now we're treating stress like it. We have now added it to the list of chronic lifestyle diseases. Now we're treating stress like it's now a disease where we're now taking medication to control it. And there is no medication on the planet that can fix stress. There's none. All the medication that they've come up with for anxiety, depression, stress, they don't have anything that fixes it. They have things to control it. But stress is not external because we see it external, because we're conditioned externally. We think stress is external. We think it's the bills, and it's the finances, and it's the traffic, and it's the boss, and it's this person, and it's that person, it's what they said, and it's how they treat me, and it's none of that. It's all how we interpret it because of our mindsets. And that is where we want to do the work. So this is important. Why? Because stress is a pandemic that is ravaging our planet and preventing us from being able to be optimal in the way we live and function. It prevents us from being able to tap into our capacity to truly live and exercise our potential. But we are looking outside, we're looking in the wrong direction to try and fix stress. The root of stress is an identity crisis that creates an inner dissonance that creates a double-minded way we live. Why? Because there's a conflict between our two natures, and it expresses itself this way, which we can all identify with. This is just an examples of it. It is privately experiencing life one way, but publicly pretending life is another. We do it so automatically and instinctively that we don't even consider that what we're doing is out of balance. It becomes our norm. It's projecting self-confidence, projecting yourself a particular way, but inwardly you're disturbed about what other people think about you. It's a false sense of confidence. It's a fractured way. Two minds because of a fractured state of being. It's judging others for proper behaviors while we try to justify our own. It's proclaiming to value the truth, yet not be honest with ourselves and with others. It's desiring to be healthy, but willfully engaging in habits and behaviors that we know are not in our best interest. It's resolving to change, to improve, to do things differently and not following through. It's thinking one way, but saying something else. Feeling one way, but doing something else. It's when our well being is defined by outer circumstances because our sense of self is defined by our physicality. So stress doesn't arise from the external circumstances of life, but from how we interpret and react to them, shaped by the internal framework of our mindsets arising out of dishonoring ourselves. That's hard to hear, but that's really, really rubber meets the road. We have to honor ourselves and our lives. I have put a document in the chat, 5 or 6 page document, as a reference for us that deals with all that we are talking about, that you can download it and go through it and use it as a reference of all that we were talking about to perhaps help us through. So I just put it there in appreciation for you taking the time to be on, and hopefully it could help you in navigating your way forward. And it's about how we honor ourselves, and it gives all the scientific data to validate what we're saying. But stress is something that we have to get a handle on, because all the authorities are saying that 60 to 80% of people in modern societies, we are living in a chronic or recurring state of stress. And 90% of doctor visits are stress related. 75 to 90% of all human illness and disease. 90% of diseases is caused by stress, thoughts, and beliefs. Epigenetics have studies on this thing. Chronic stress increases the odds of developing Alzheimer's by 145%. And not just Alzheimer's, depression, the rate of suicide, OCD, PTSD. And now we're given, what would you do with it? Antidepressants, beta blockers, different types of medications and it doesn't fix it. It doesn't fix it. Like all that medication, it controls it. But how it pertains to how it breaks our bodies down. And this is important because once our bodies start to lose energy, becomes dysfunctional, and gradually spiral down to becoming sick, it doesn't matter what you have, what you own, none of that seems to matter when this physical body starts to lose its vitality and its capacity. And it happens, it is 50 million people a year die from lifestyle disease. That's 30 million people more a year than people died from COVID in 2 years. And we were afraid of COVID. Lifestyle disease is a much greater pandemic, and we don't think much of it. But the central nervous system, which is how the mind transmits from mind to body, this is the bridge of how we come to experience life, because through emotions. Emotions are the energy of thoughts expressed inside the body. And a lot of us, when we deal with illness, we're trying to fix illnesses by taking in medicines, herbs, and supplements, and all these things, and they have their place. But very rarely do we look at what is impacting our health, our physical health at the cellular level, by what we are transacting in our minds, which every cell in the body is reading. This is all verified by epigenetics. So here's how it works. The central nervous system, which is the brain and the entire network of nerves through our body, that extends into what is called the autonomic nervous system, which is what controls all bodily functions. Right to the cellular level, everything is trillions of functions are taking place right now in our bodies, which we are not aware of. We can't even feel it. We don't know it's happening. It's happening automatically by the autonomic nervous system. That autonomic nervous system has 2 branches. One branch, the sympathetic system, it deals with stress response, what we call the fight-flight response. This system becomes activated whenever there's chronic stress. And it leads to all known chronic lifestyle diseases, because chronic stress promotes what is called oxidation and inflammation, which is the seedbed from which all chronic lifestyle disease spring. There is no lifestyle disease that does not spring out of the seedbed of inflammation and oxidation. And what drives that more than anything else, more than the food we eat, is what's transacted in our minds, translated as emotions and embedded inside the body. Energies that's trapped inside the body, traumas, emotional traumas that are trapped inside the body. They create more imbalance and more dysfunction than a bad diet does. And we don't know that. That's why it's important that we get a handle on this. Because we could be eating right, we could be exercising and taking our supplements, and I'm sure we have all heard about people who've been trying to do it right and they still get diagnosed with cancer, they still get a heart attack, they still get a stroke. And people are saying, I don't understand, how is that possible? That person was living so healthy, but they were perhaps taking on things internally that nobody can see that has greater impact. It just takes time. And it's not the stress that's today, it is the chronic, recurring, ongoing stress that's happening continuously every day of life. It's living with the frustrations and the anxieties and the fears. It's happening, and it eventually breaks our system down in all kinds of ways. This too we learn about in our workshops. The other branch of the autonomic nervous system is the parasympathetic system, which is how we naturally function when the mind is in a peaceful state. This one deals with healing and recovery. When the parasympathetic system is dominant, we heal and repair from any and everything. This is the phenomenon in medicine that they call spontaneous remission or spontaneous healing, which medicine can't explain. And it's where people with terminal conditions or incurable conditions fully recover without any type of medical or alternative intervention. And that's another story. But how is that possible? It's happened because when the body becomes a sympathetic dominant, when the nervous system is parasympathetic dominant, the body heals and recovers from anything. And so the central nervous system is regulated by our state of mind. And our state of mind is measured by brainwave activity. Very important. We want to have our state of being defined by our emotions, which affects how we choose, how we engage with life, is based on our state of mind, but our state of mind is what regulates our central nervous system. So what neuroscience tells us is that when the brain waves, which is how we measure the state of mind, when they reflect harmonious regulation, coherent function, because of positive frequencies like love, peace, joy, gratitude, etc., the central nervous system maintains a parasympathetic dominance and it stays in its natural balance. The body functions optimally, doesn't get sick. Anything comes in, the body takes care of it. It repairs, it regenerates naturally. But when brain waves reflect an inner dissonance, disorder, disharmony, dysregulation, because of negative frequencies, fear, worry, anxiety, guilt, resentment, etc., the central nervous system shifts into that survival mode. It shifts into the sympathetic dominance. And it happens naturally in states of emergency, but it's when it's continuous as a lifestyle, it is going to gradually spring weeds from that seedbed of oxidation and inflammation. And so the solution is really returning to a life of wholeness. And how do we nurture that life is that every dimension of our being, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and socially, we have to engage the practices that's based on principles of truth, and it's all rooted in our true essence of self, which is love. That's where it begins. And this is what we unfold in our whole living concept. And so that inner alignment creates a state of mind that's in harmony, synchronizing brain waves in coherence, resetting the central nervous system to its optimal function. When we can live aligned, our mind and body functions optimally, our creative potential, our capacity to perform, our ability to think clearly, and how we live is extraordinary. And it's all just wholeness. It is a state where who we are, what we believe, and how we live is one and the same. But here's where I want to tell you now, where I'm going to switch. What if there was a way to synchronize our brain waves into coherence, where our brain waves could resemble a state of mind that is in harmony and in balance while we're working on ourselves? Because this takes time, it takes commitment, it takes discipline, it takes persistence in working on ourselves so we can live our best life. Well, what if there was a way that we can immediately begin to bring our brain waves into a state that resembles a state of mind that's already in harmony? Well, what would happen is that our our body and our mind will start functioning more optimally. And that is where this extraordinary technology comes in. This is a discovery that was made by a gentleman some years ago, and over 17 years of research and development brought it to a point where a simple pattern that includes no drugs, no medicines, no ingredients, no types of substances, no external frequencies, electrical devices, nothing at all. It puts zero things inside the body. This technology harnesses that mind body synergy, and it brings the mind and the brain into a state that resembles being in that state of harmony and balance. And the result is it upregulates how the brain and body functions. And so it has tremendous impact on our well-being. It was discovered and invented by this gentleman called Jay Dhaliwal, who is the CEO and founder of a company called the Super Patch Company. It's a wellness technology company. And it introduces to the world a brand new paradigm of drug-free wellness. That's a huge deal because we can now impact our well-being physically and mentally without ingesting or injecting or putting any type of ingredients into the body. That's a big deal. That puts it into a category all by itself. And I have been using it personally, but I've been working with people with it. And in my 25 years of clinical practice, I've not come across anything that has such a deep and profound impact on human well-being as this technology. This is a EEG brain scan with Mr. Dhaliwal showing. This is going to be about a 2-minute video to show how the technology actually works with brainwaves. Just watch it. Let's watch it.
Hi everyone, I'm Jay Dhaliwal. I'm the CEO and founder of Vox Life and the creator of Vox Life HPT. Today, I want to talk to you about our Harmony Neuro Patch. And what this product does is actually stimulates receptors on our skin, sending a neurosignal to our brain to help it reach homeostasis. This is the only product in the world that relies on the neurohaptic system that every single one of us has to optimize our neurology and optimize our health. Today, with the help of Dr. Mark DeBrinket, our VP of Clinical Strategy, we're going to be using an FDA-cleared 19-channel EEG headset, as well as FDA-cleared software to visualize, record, and show the impact that our technology has on our neurology and our brains to help it reach optimal performance. What we want to show today is how the Harmony Neuro Patch helps that dysregulated yellow, blue, and red colors in the brain maps transform into that healthy green homeostasis neurology that is the foundation of health and wellness. So what we're looking at right now is a neurological QEEG output of Mike's limbic system. The 19 channels are reading over 60,000 brainwaves a second and generating an output of neurofunction and brainwaves. What we want to see now is where that suboptimal red and yellow colors are, we want to see them turning as much as possible to a healthy green with the application of our HPT patch. So we've applied the patch now to Mike's arm, and within 10 seconds, you're seeing that predominant yellow and red become predominantly green. Just for clarification, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing in the world that has this output at this rate of speed without drugs, without chemicals, without electricity. That's the power of Vox HPT. So when we see a healthy green neurology, what we're looking at is a brain and a mind in homeostasis. It is operating in its optimal function. And this is so important. And this is why it's so important. So VoxLife HPT, as we demonstrated with our neuro patch, helps the central nervous system reach homeostasis in our neurology. And the reason this is so important for overall wellness and health is that neurology is the top of the pyramid of our physiological health and wellness paradigm. First is neurology at the very top, then there's chemistry, then there's biology, then there's physics and mechanics. Neurology will have an impact all the way through our entire physiology. Healthy neurology, healthy body, better wellness.
The technology is based on Nobel Prize science, and we know that the brain waves is a reflection of our state of mind. The science of how that super patch is built on goes back into the early 1930s and 40s, where they discovered that every cell in the human body emits and receives electromagnetic frequencies. That has given rise to equipment that we have today, like the same EEG headset or MRIs, MEGs, EKGs and ultrasounds. All this technology came out of recognizing that every cell in the body emits and received electromagnetic frequencies. And then later on, there was other Nobel Prize science that showed that embedded in the skin, in the neurons in the skin, are receptors called ion channels that can receive or read the vibrational pattern of anything that touches the skin. We knew for years that when anything touches the skin, or you walk into a room and the temperature is different, it always will send a signal to your brain to let you know. So you'll always know what your environment is like, what is touching you, because the skin always sends a signal to the brain. But now these ion channels, they discovered that these ion channels not just detect touch, but vibration and temperature, and so it can read the vibrational patterns. Superpatch technology is built on that, and so a way to understand it is almost similar to a QR code. This QR code here, it has information embedded in it, but you can't see what it is. But if you point a camera at it, it will convert the visual patterns into a digital signal, and it would unlock the information in that QR code, which is a QR code of my website. This super patch is similar. The specialized ionic receptors in the skin, they detect the vibration of the pattern, which is all the patch has on it. It's just a tactile pattern. And it sends a neural signal to the brain that synchronizes specific brain waves. Each pattern sends a different signal to reset various neural networks or neural pathways in the brain, bringing them back to their optimal state. The one that you saw Jay demonstrated, which brought the limbic system back into coherence, that's very significant because the limbic system is the emotional center of the brain, which most people have very little control over. So when we can harness that and bring that into balance, it gives us access now to begin to retrain and reset mindsets in ways that before it became very difficult to access. And so SuperPatch, the vibrotactile technology, as it's called, 17 years and $40 million in research and development. It has become peer-reviewed, published science now, published in some of the prestigious medical journals around the world, like the International Journal of Family Medicine and Healthcare. So it's accepted, bona fide technology. It's also being presented at major global medical research symposiums, which have their own peer-reviewed and independent scientific authorities. Why I'm sharing this with you is that so you know that this is not something experimental. This is not something that's being done behind the scenes. This is a very open, very accepted, very advanced technology that the world has never seen before, yet it is so simple. They have 13 revolutionary targeted solutions that's designed to address most of the common needs in health, wellness, and performance. Understand that these patches, these 13 different technologies, is a simple pattern engraved on a patch that when the pattern touches your skin, it sends a signal to your brain. So they have it for, let's say, the one for stress. There is no medicine that can take away, that can change your things like stress and anxiety. They will give you antidepressants and things to cope with it. The only way to remove and be relieved from what stress is doing to your mind and your body is that you have to reset the neural pathways that becomes disrupted in the limbic system in order to feel I don't feel stressed anymore. And super patch is exactly what it does. When you use the peace patch, as it's called, which is for stress and anxiety, and these are all clinically developed, all they're double-blind studies, and they're all clinical research and developed. You put on the peace patch in a matter of moments. If you're feeling overwhelmed and can't cope, stress and anxiety, in a matter of moments, you just start to feel centered because it brings the neural network that deals with the stress response. It shifts you from that from that sympathetic dominance into being more parasympathetic, and you start to feel more centered, more calm. When you use that continuously over time, it begins to reset and rewire the neural networks where you now can cope with stress a lot more efficiently. This is way beyond popping pills. There's nothing on the planet that currently works like this. Sleep is another thing. Whether it be herbs, whether it be sleep, any type of sleep aid, pharmaceutical or otherwise, none of them help you to sleep better by resetting your circadian rhythms. When a person is not sleeping well, be it because of bad lifestyle habits or stress in itself, it's because the circadian rhythms for sleep has gone out of balance. No pills or potions reset circadian rhythm. The only way to reset the circadian rhythm for sleep, where deep restorative sleep becomes natural, is the neural network has to be reset. That's what the REM patch will do. The one that you saw demonstrated, which is really for mobility, it brings the whole limbic system and the brain into coherence and balance. That is phenomenal because a human being, just even through meditation, you have to be meditation for many, many years to be able to have that type of mental control. But it's for mobility. It brings balance, stability, and strength, and it can be tested in real time, and it happens in a matter of seconds. You can see what your grip strength, what your balance, you can stand on one leg, or you could check your posture of balance, and you can see how it's going to improve in a matter of seconds. Pain is another thing. Whether it is pain from arthritic or some maybe fibromyalgia, these pain centers, it balances the neural matrix of pain, and the body reduces the pain, 72% reduction in pain in 20 minutes based on the clinicals, without any type of ingredients. The defend patch for the immune system is remarkable, incredible. I've not seen anything that upregulates immune function and brings it to its optimal state. And I mean in a matter of minutes. And so if you had like a terrible flu that may take 10 days, a week to 10 days to get rid of, you could see that you could get rid of that in a very, very short space of time. The victories for athletic performance. It increases your peak force, your strength, your endurance, your stamina, and it does it in a matter of seconds. You talk about energy, don't put that garbage, that toxic stuff in these energy drinks into your body. You want clean energy on demand. The boost patch is energy. Moods, you're struggling with moods, being positive, feeling low, feeling depressed. The joy patch balances the neural networks that is all associated with these states. You want better focus, concentration, enhanced memory, cognitive, use the focus. You have a job that demands high intensity laser focus, this patch will do it. Healthy skin, the Lumi patch is absolutely an amazing patch for skin. This, when I first started using this and sharing this with people, it baffled me how this was improving people's, including my own skin quality. How I was doing it without any ingredients, but how it works is absolutely amazing. Improve metabolism. You're struggling with addiction. And I'm not saying that people should not take other support or seek counsel and the other things. All of those things are good, but this is about getting to the core of the problem. This is okay. There are only two things that keeps the body functioning at its optimal state. I mean the mind and the body that keeps them in synergy and keeps it optimal. Only two principles. One is external, that is nourishment, food, supplements. That could include herbs, medicines, but all external inputs. And it needs function. External inputs, nutrition does not generate or even improve function as we think. Function is completely regulated by alignment. Function is built in to the system. Function is built into design. Function is constant. It never stops. It does not diminish. It is what formed the first cell. It is what organized the development, and it's what's running everything in our body right now. That built in function, that's constant. Lifestyle, diet, thoughts, and emotions can interfere, disrupt, block, hinder that function. We could improve diet, nutrition, and feel better, but we did not improve function. What we did was remove blockages, imbalances, toxicity. We did things that released its flow. Function is fundamental. We need to improve how we feed our bodies. Absolutely. But function is fundamental. If we improve function and don't improve inputs, function being optimized brings deficiencies more optimal. So we still function better. Of course, the ideal thing is you want to have them both. This is at the root. There's nothing that impacts the human well-being physically and mentally right now on the planet than something as simple but as profoundly powerful as super patches. These are mind-body solutions that I recommend that all of us, everybody should consider using. Why? Because we all need it. Because our minds are in a state and we don't pay attention to it. We think for this body to work better, it depends on what you put through your mouth. That has its place. But what the control center, the brain, which is the processing center of the mind, if that is not optimal, and for that to be optimal, our mindsets needs to be shifted as well. And I know that it could be a challenge, but this is a solution that becomes a bridge that can take us there. And so it's non-invasive, it's completely safe, no contraindications. If you have even medical devices implanted, you have to worry about it. They're FDA registered, they're safe for children and safe for the elderly. They're effective. There's a 95% positive reviews with it. And what's surprising to me when I first came across this technology is that I was surprised how accessible they are, that most people can actually afford to use them. A wonderful thing about super patches is that when we synchronize them together and we use them, we can access different levels of capacities and harmonization between brain and body. And so the more the brain is in sync, the greater the rhythm of flow and function between mind and body. And that nurtures and optimizes that natural flow of balance, vitality, and elevated well-being, both mentally and physically. For example, this four at the bottom here, liberty, peace, joy, and kick it, the combination of those entrains the brain waves to be more at a theta, alpha theta state. Why is that important? Most people We don't function with our brains, function with our brainwaves at that state. That's when you're going into meditation or a very deep sleep. But it entrains our brains like that while we're still fully awake. What does that mean? It means that learning deep things, it means our capacity to shift mindsets, to rewire our brains becomes far more accessible now. That's incredible. For those that I don't understand don't know how many of you really will catch what that means, but that is something that has been inaccessible um, previously in a very practical way, in the very just by a wearable device as it is like Superpatch. So just to conclude, this can unlock the potential that we all possess by harnessing, by becoming a bridge. They're very safe, non-invasive neurotechnology. It optimizes the brainwave entrainment and it supports neuroplasticity. That's very important because neuroplasticity is how the brain begins to rewire itself, and it's doing it constantly, but it rewires itself to this new balance of the super patches. It begins rewiring itself over time. And that's where we get more sustainability over time. And so it delivers specific neural signals that generally guide the brain towards healthier states. And those signals, they sync with the regenerative intelligence of the body's operating system, which is the brain, and it enhances that mind-body synergy. The signaling creates an optimal environment for rapid neurological alignment. It really starts working in a matter of seconds. And it makes mindset shifts more natural and more accessible. When people try to shift their mindsets, even people even find it difficult even to focus on one thing for even 10 seconds without their mind flying all over the place. Our minds are so restless that even to focus and to engage in mindfulness, people find it challenging. This becomes a bridge that makes it more accessible. So super patches, they work like upgrading or updating the body's operating system so that we can run the new apps of transformation, which are the practices that we want to engage in realigning our lives. As we engage in that, we upgrade the operating system so that now those transformative apps become more effective. We are very thankful for the Medical Advisory Board that deals with real world application and make sure that our patches are compliant and they meet all the standards out in the field. And so my invitation to you is to look at your life, consider your life. As you look at your choices in your journey ahead in your life, becoming your best so that you can live your best, and understanding how it works, you as a whole being, and how we can all return to that. Superpatch becomes a wearable solution that can help bridge this process. Because in my own journey, and you too might have experienced it, that when we try to harness our minds, when we try to work with renewing our habitual thought patterns and we find it difficult, this is what makes it more accessible. And so there are solutions to live super naturally tailored to your body's own intelligence. You can visit our Patch and Go Facebook page where there are thousands of testimonies of how it's impacting people's lives positively all around the world. And so my invitation to you is to get aligned, look at what we talked about, download the document that I put in the chat. I posted a document in the chat. It's about 5 or 6 pages. It goes through points of what we talked about tonight, so you could use as a reference and hopefully help you along the way. But since the mind is the axis for life experiences, super patches are our strategic support to help us to be able to engage, living our best life and become more aligned. And so I want to invite you to consider super patch as part of your lifestyle. Become a member of our global community. It's a one-time cost of $40 to do that, and you can access the wholesale pricing. And you begin by purchasing what we call a Flex Force starter pack. That $175 includes the $40 one time, and you can choose 3 of any of the technologies and 1 free. And this is the simplest way to become a member of our community. For this month of October, the company has a promotion where that $40 is now just $1. And so you can become a member of the community for $1, gain access to the wholesale pricing, and start to use the technologies for yourself. Um, you can speak with myself or any of the partners that might have invited you on the call if you're not sure which ones are for you, or we have a video that goes through where the CEO goes through all the products, explaining them, and so you may have a better gauge of which one is most suitable for you. As a member of the community, you also have an option to become an entrepreneur and join our entrepreneurial program where you could build a globally scalable business of your own. And it's a business model that's based on principles of compound growth. This is something that I also think that it is worth looking at, because the way the global economy is today and the way the future is being shaped by AI, etc., we have to consider viable ways of how we can prepare ourselves for financial security down the road, even if it is simple things of staying ahead of inflation and trying to live a debt-free life, which when we live in debt, I don't think there's anything that could be more stressful than that. Now, it may be for you, it may not be for you, but it's worth looking at. And maybe you are just interested in using the technology for your own well-being. That's fine, but you also have the option to become an entrepreneur. If you are interested, where we will talk more about the technology, the business concept, and its potential, you can scan the QR code there, and you can get the Zoom link to our business meeting where we explain how that entrepreneurial opportunity works. And we talk a little bit more about the technology, and that's tomorrow evening at 6:30 p.m. Um, Apart from scanning the QR code for the Zoom link, you can reach out to any of our partners and they can share that Zoom link with you as well. And so I want to thank you for staying the course and staying on with me, going through all the way. Um, let me see what time is it now, 8:12, a little bit longer than I expected, but I really felt the need to take my time and go through what I went through today, and I thank you for staying the course. Please, if you haven't, download that document that's posted in the chat, and it's going to be a good resource to help you as a reference and even as a guide to go through to begin your own journey. And hopefully we'll get to see you tomorrow evening at our business presentation. Um, with that, I want to say good night and thank you all. God bless every one of you for being on the call tonight. And I hope you got something that will help to spark something within you to be able to, as you look ahead in the journey of your life, to be able to take it from a higher perspective. God bless you. Good night.